There is a common phrase amongst reactionaries, that phrase being America, the West, or any country in the West, really, has fallen. This phrase is common amongst fascists and would-be fascists because of its inherent ability to dog whistle for pretty much any particular issue. When reactionaries use this phrase, they could be talking about anything from transgender rights to immigration or even taxes on oil companies. This phrase is basically just hate-fueled garbage. But why? There are many reasons why the US is on the decline, but none of them have to do with transgender people having pronouns or immigration through our southern border. It has to do with how the systems that exist today operate. First, though, we must understand where this phrase originated. Well, its origins seem to stem from two distinct areas. The first area being the fall of Rome. Weak men supposedly infiltrated the Roman Empire and caused its eventual decay and collapse. This is also connected to the weak men create hard times philosophy, which is completely baseless. Weak men do not create hard times. There are plenty of examples throughout history of competent leaders utilizing oppression to create hard times, even within our own country. So no, weak men do not create hard times. Weak men is also a deeply fascistic philosophy, a contemptuous resentment of weak people born from a pro-nation and simply anti-human attitude. As with the fall of Rome, weak men are often the boogeymen and the false scapegoats of disaster. Fascist, or at least fascistic nations, will use the idea of weak men in order to create fear and thus design the artificial need for a strong man to lead the country. Such examples include Donald Trump and the man himself, Adolf Hitler, and their use of fear-mongering against weak men or perceived weak men. The fall of Rome angle is also inaccurate in itself. Weak men didn't infiltrate the empire and cause it to collapse. Rome collapsed because of logistical disasters and plagues. And the ideas for what weak men even are is also a good point of discussion. The idea of a weak man is completely arbitrary. It could fit any narrative, and it could be whatever it needs to be in order to fit the plot. For example, some groups see weak men as being inherently feminine and having feminine traits, especially within the manosphere, because of their inherent misogyny. Some groups see weak men as cowards, which, because of their cowardice and incompetence, create hard times, which is false because, again, competent leaders have been utilizing oppression to create hard times throughout all of history. In essence, the phrase's first area of origin seemed to stem from pseudo-intellectualism, pseudo-philosophy, false history, not to mention fallacious and deeply fascistic grounds. The second area of origin seems to be involved with the Great Replacement theory, which is a white supremacist and ultimately nationalistic conspiracy. The conspiracy proposes, on a basic level, that black population increases, immigration, and white depopulation will cause white people to become a minority and thus become second-class citizens, which will end in white genocide. On a further level, the conspiracy postulates that a cabal of elites are coordinating this effort for whatever reason. The conspiracy itself is based in no facts about reality beyond statistics that outline that whites are giving birth less than they used to, and that immigration as a phenomenon is still occurring as it always has been in every country. The theory is blatantly racist and unjustly fearful. Thus, on both fronts of origin, the phrase and its counterpart, "the West has fallen," are just flagrantly racist and fallacious, and in some cases even fascistic. In most cases, actually, but... Now, as you can see, the main problem with this phrase is its fundamental connection to reactionary politics. People who aren't reactionary or aren't racist simply don't use these phrases. Sentiments similar to this have existed for a long time and are always reactionary in nature. The people that spout this rhetoric are people who hold sets of beliefs that conform to social regression and genuine hatred. For example, within the contemporary political climate, transgender people are at the forefront of the rights culture war. Their rights, their pronouns, and their classifications, etc., all being attacked by the American right while they shout from the top of their lungs, "America has fallen because transgender women have pronouns." This is not an uncommon behavior. Anti-human conservatives will see people being themselves in a way that they're not knowledgeable in or are unjustly skeptical of, and automatically think that that's the degenerate decay of the foundation of the body politic. A counter to my argument could be, well, from their perspective, all they see is transgender people being talked about all the time. So from their perspective, isn't it fair to say that they could be seeing it as a degeneration of true politics? Unfortunately, no. The current popularity of a given topic ultimately stems from the coverage of that topic from both sides, which includes conservative speakers and rhetoricians. The reason why conservatives see transgender people being talked about so much is because they exist within spaces where the pundits in those spaces want them dead or controlled, and they make that bias very clear and widespread. Every meme where you see a person being mad at the fact that transgender women have pronouns or that we couldn't tell mentally ill people to shut the fuck up contributes to that. The dissemination of information and, frankly, propaganda is controlled by the people who influence that space the most. The easiest and simplest solution to not see transgender people that much anymore is to just simply stop talking about them, legislating against them, or committing hate crimes against them. So if they did this, then the coverage of this topic would only come from one side, the left. And the left's coverage would also lessen over time as well, because there would be no counter movements to respond to. But this is just only a portion of this issue. Another problem we run into is that the hypothetical counter and its attitude implicitly implies that talking about transgender people in any way is inherently a degeneration of politics. This harkens directly to the alt-right's conspiracies about cultural degeneracy, sexual deviancy being inherently degenerate, and the publication of that deviancy also being degenerate, including gender deviancy. The frustration against the coverage of the transgender topic is not a valid point on its own, and the attitudes surrounding it just simply appeal to a hatred of change and people different from the norm. Another response to the "West has fallen" phrase comes in the form of understanding America's real issues. Because, let's face it, transgender people having pronouns is not a real issue. It's a manufactured problem to get evil people riled up and angry. All in service of the status quo and the people in power. Real problems come in the form of humanitarian crises. Whether reactionaries like it or not, climate change, income inequality, lack of affordable healthcare, food insecurity, and a lack of basic necessities, which include but are not limited to housing, water, power, internet, transportation, etc. All of these and more are actual issues within our country, but the main and most prominent talking points on the American right is pronouns bad and the transes are everywhere. Also with a little anti-immigration rhetoric sprinkled in. Yes, America is indeed failing, but not because gay people read stories to children in a public library, or because a transgender woman has a different pronoun than what you would like her to have. America is failing because it necessarily fails at providing basic necessities to its own citizens. We live in a post-scarcity society, and yet a family of 3 has to pay anywhere from $300 to $400 per week on food, hundreds a month on health insurance already after being subsidized by their job benefits, and thousands a month on just basic housing, and hundreds on transportation. A truly free country isn't one that's defined by the freedom of being able to spend 2/3 of your entire paycheck on things that you need to live and go to work. A truly free country is one that affords these essentials to their citizens so they can spend their hard-earned money on things they actually want. The United States is failing at this so badly that it was the only country out of hundreds to not identify food as a human right in the entirety of of the United Nations. Overall, the phrases like America has fallen or the West has fallen are built on necessarily fallacious and historically false grounds. It serves to propagandize non-issues as the root causes of social decay. It is anti-human and fundamentally fascistic on a rhetorical and ideological level. It completely ignores real economic and social problems within our lives while only serving to proliferate the status quo in service of political and economic elites. And most importantly, it's simply a stupid phrase that only unfuckable losers and wife beaters will parrot. America is failing, but it's because of the people that use this phrase and not the people that this phrase is used against. Hello guys, if you enjoyed this vocalization and reading of a essay that I finished literally 2 days ago, then please subscribe, consider donating to my Patreon like this wonderful, wonderful person here, and for real, stick around, because there are other projects to come. I'm working on 2 different videos right now. This was the 3rd one, the shortest out of all of them, and so I decided to just release this one earlier, since especially it was easier to make. The other 2 videos will come out in the coming weeks, maybe even months, considering the 3rd one. So yeah, stick around, follow for more, and consider donating to my Patreon. See ya.